Yeah, and welcome to another video. I'm Brett Papa, and today, let's have some fun. Do some more freaking rhythm guitar. It's been awesome. I've been really, one more time, really loving playing to drum grooves lately. Easy Drummer 3, I'm gonna just tell you right off the bat, I have no affiliation with that company. But man, is it super inspiring to have a bunch of different drum groups at your disposal that you can practice to, because it makes your practice have purpose. You're like actually playing to a beat. You're learning how to play off of different beats. You're learning how to create rhythm, right? Not just leads or notes, but actually like how to make something feel a certain way. And all of us got here because we liked songs and we liked the way the guitar player or the band wrote songs and the rhythms they used, and all that stuff is what sucks you in to the song. But it's an often very overlooked skill in guitar playing. So why not make it fun and, take at least half of our practice time from this point forward and practice to some grooves. Now, in the lesson I did previous to this one, there's 2 drum tracks that you can download, or at the end of the video lesson, there's 2 tracks that you can play along to. This one's a different groove. And today we're gonna concentrate on something where, it's a little slower. And typically in slower songs, people strum and do that kind of stuff. And a lot of times guitar players, especially if you're kind of like in that late beginner, early intermediate phase, are really uncomfortable with space and letting stuff ring out and creating stuff that doesn't just always there's not always movement, like a strum pattern or acoustic. Somebody's always laying down the fort, doing all that kind of stuff. So today we're going to do 2 things. We're going to learn how to create a really kind of sparse part that relies more on kind of an internal melody. And then we're going to do sort of an R&B double stop thing. And I'll show you how to use scales and caged shapes to kind of create some licks. And if you like this, there's a new course down below, 50% off for opening week, called Foundations of Rhythm, Nashville Sessions. And what's cool about that course is I'm going to teach you fundamental stuff, how to play to grooves, different embellishments, things like that, double stops that you can use. And then I'm going to bring in 2 A-list Nashville session guitar players. One of them, Kenny Greenberg, is an absolute legend in this town. Played on tons of hits, tons of different records from blues to country. He's Kenny Chesney's guitar player when he plays stadiums, done it all. They're going to show you, and Justin Ostrander is kind of one of the newer guys, also played on hits, plays with all sorts of different people, all sorts of different kinds of music. But both of those guys are going to come in and show you how to think about rhythm so you can create parts that work with, say, like an acoustic guitar player, or if there's another electric guitar player, or you're going to a jam and you don't want to play the same thing that the other guitar player is playing. How do you create those other parts? How do you create hooks? How do you create melodies? Parts that stick in people's heads? All that stuff is in that course, and it turned out so awesome. And the cool thing about it is it really teaches you how to improvise playing rhythm. So it's not all just, soloing people that get the fun improvising. You can really learn how to make things sound really cool by improvising rhythmically. So let's get onto a couple of those. Now, again, that stuff's down below. The drum track I'm going to use, I'm going to put at the end of this video, but also if you want to download it, it'll also be linked in the description box. So here's our beat. And right off the bat, the first thing we want to start doing when we're doing this is really think about this hand. A lot of us, this hand is what we're always thinking about, just sole focus here. But think about this hand too. This is the groove. This is your moneymaker. This is your drum set, right? So let's listen to this beat. Let's get this hand to just go with those kicks and those rim shots, right? So. Now you see this hand moving more. If you listen, there's also what's called a hi-hat, and that's that little in the background. And so that's great if you want to do like upstrokes, or you want to do, just all downstrokes. to lock into the kick and the snare, but also that consistent, that's kind of like subdividing in between those kicks and snares. Right? So that's what the hi-hat's doing. So if you start to think about, okay, well, maybe I'll play off of the kick and the snare and then add a couple of those other little beats in there, right? A couple of those hi-hat beats. So maybe it'll start to sound like. So spend some time just doing that, right? That in and of itself will really start to get this hand going, and just don't even worry about this hand, right? Just get this hand going. A lot of times the problem with people not being able to get, you know, into rhythms and feel a pocket or really start to lock into a groove is they're thinking about way too many things. So take this completely out of the equation and just do this. And if you notice, I'm hitting some of those beats harder than the other ones. So I'm accenting those beats too. And that creates sort of a rhythmic feel too. Because if I just went, right, it sounds fine. And in some instances, that's what's called for in a tune. But once you start accenting those beats, which means hitting the volume a little softer, a little harder, at different parts in the beat, maybe you skip some of those, you know, eighth note beats in there, so it's more of like what a drum set would be doing. So maybe it's like, right? And you're starting to learn how to make this hand really drive the rhythm. Now, the next thing you're going to do, obviously, would be add a chord. Just pick one chord, right? So typically in this type of a song, let's say we're going to go from like G to C. By the way, people are going to ask, going into the Marshall JTM Studio, amp is so freaking good. If you can't quite get into the higher boutique realms of amps and you're like, what is just a solid gig ready killer amp that's not gonna just totally break the bank? That freaking Marshall is so good. I love it. And then this particular one is kind of a, I think there's only like 100 of them made, but it comes with a little 112 cabinet with the new G12H speaker in it, which you can buy the speaker by itself. It is probably like, the speaker is so good. I cannot even explain how good this speaker sounds. And I've played that cabinet, which sounds great, the little Marshall 112 cabinets with a bunch of different heads. It just sounds awesome. But the combo of the two things, I'll do a demo on this whole rig later, but the combo of the two things, just killer little gig amp. Okay, so it's my Marshall plug. Okay, and if you're interested in the gear I use, I leave some of that down below too. Okay, so chord. Now, typically, you know, you might hear somebody strum to this, right? Which is great. So maybe. Okay, now I'm doing that by the same thing. I'm listening for those kicks and the snares, right? So it's kick, kick, snare, right? The snare's on an upstroke, right? So we got 3, 4. Now remember, you had those hi-hats. So that's oftentimes where some of those other upstrokes are and where you can line those up. So it's all about just listening to what that drummer is playing and lining up your hand to go with it. So. Right? So maybe you're way beyond that, right? Maybe there's another guitar player, acoustic player laying that down, and it's like, okay, well, what else are you gonna do? You don't wanna both do that. So one of the things you can do is create a part with a little bit more space in it, and maybe has more of a melody line. And so you could take like a G and let maybe just the chord ring, right? 3, 4. Right? Same thing, playing out that kick and snare. But a little more space, right? Once you get that down, maybe you add like a little lick like that. So you got maybe. Right now, that becomes a rhythmic element too, and your fingers have to start paying attention to the rhythm you're hammer on, right? So maybe you take this beat and you learn how to sync up the hammer-ons in time. 2, 3, 4. Right, listen for those kick and snares. Right? I'm still like listening for those kicks and snares to have some of those notes land on it. So maybe you just get used to start trying to do those licks in time to where they're landing on those kicks and snares as well. You can make them super simple. You don't always have to. Some hammer-ons are, right? Like where you're doing a quick hammer-on. So maybe it's. Okay, so practice that, because and having space and having that. See, it has that kind of melody that goes with the chords. So maybe the acoustic player is doing that. And you don't need to play so much. They're kind of covering something. You want to play in the same register maybe? Sometimes, you know, and they'll go over this a lot in the course, when someone's playing down here, maybe you play up here and create something different. And that's when you can create little parts, right? So if we're going to do that, let's change up our song a little bit. We're going to use the same chords, but now I'm going to use power chords or big major chords. We'll do the G here and a C here, and maybe a D here. We'll do like a 1, 4, 5. Now you can create a totally different kind of beat. So check this out. I'll take this G chord and do kind of more like what I was talking about with the. So we'll start listening a little bit more to that hi-hat, because we'll kind of play off of that a little bit, because it's gonna be, there's gonna be more of this happening, so we need to lock into something. So we'll listen to the hi-hats and the kicks and the snares, right? So maybe we gotta. right? So in that instance, and then that's kind of, it's called different things, but some people call them chicks. That's where you're hitting the bottom side of that chord, maybe like the bottom 2 strings, and then you let the pressure off. So it just mutes out really quick. Let me do it with the beat. So it's really lasting about as long as that, that rim shot of the snare, really quick. You just let, and then you let the pressure off. And I'm also letting the pressure off of my actual hand. So it's real percussive, right? It creates a real bounce, and it's not just, right? If I can do the same thing without any of that muting, and it's gonna sound like this. Not nearly the same effect, right? So. And that slide, catching that kick right in time. So we got here, 4. Now what you can do is you can start to add little things like embellishments, right? So that's hammering on to the major third. So it's like a minor chord, and then you hammer onto this note, or right? So let's do some of that. So you're gonna, maybe that's down, down, and then down, up, right? All melodies that you can create in the chord, you can and that's just hammering, like you're taking part of that chord. Imagine you're doing like and you're hammering into that major third, right? And this becomes that kind of second guitar part. Now this is all stuff that you can easily learn in the Cage system. I have a whole course in the Cage system, teaches you all this kind of stuff. I have a Hendrix course that really dives into this, but you're just taking a chord shape. Anytime you see this chord shape, Imagine that pentatonic shape that looks like that. I call it shape 2. That's always going to be below your fingers. So, and you can, anytime you play that chord, that is right below your finger. So that's where all these. Now, if that chord right there is shape 2, then that shape 3 is right here too. It's just like the pentatonic scale, just goes straight up from there. If you know all your pentatonic positions, if you see this chord shape, this is under your fingers, then that next position is right behind it, and that's where you get the. All that stuff is right behind there. And then this chord shape, right? The E shape, think of these notes, it looks like an E chord. And the D shape, here's a little D shape chord, same chord. This is a G. You can connect those two cage shapes together with that pentatonic scale. Then you start to understand that Hendrix thing. I have a bunch of videos on YouTube, like using the cage system to sound like Hendrix. Just search my channel for Hendrix rhythm and you'll see it. And that you'll see this whole thing broken down in a much greater detail. But this is where all of those cool, like double stop ideas come from, and how you can start to see, oh, that's how the people do that, right? So if we're gonna start to put those into a tune, okay, so same thing with these A-shaped chords like this. In the cage system, there'll be what's called the G shape right behind that. Or you can just think of the pentatonic shape 1 being right behind that, and that's where you get the. Now, anytime you see this shape, that's what happens. And keep in mind, you know, these cage shapes and the pentatonic shapes, they go hand in hand together. So anytime there's a caged chord shape, there is a pentatonic shape that goes with that. Cage system is the most mind-blowing way to learn your fretboard. It just, everything opened up once I understood that. But I don't have time to go into that here. It's more of a rhythm thing, but I have tons of videos on that on YouTube. So check those out too. If you combine these two things, caged and this rhythm stuff, just you'll be off to the races, and you'll really be able to create music just for fun. Like, you don't have to aspire to be in a big band and, you know, sell out stadiums. That's great if you do, but like just sitting at home and making something up out of nothing is totally awesome, right? So right? So you can create those little hook licks, right? I'm taking that chord, this G chord, and doing this D shape of that G chord. right? So it's all about taking the drum beat and starting to experiment rhythmically. Now, obviously you can do this with your lead playing too, right? You can take this same beat and start to pocket your little licks. And start to do that same kind of thing, right? Listen for those kicks, those snares, those hi-hats to play off your lead licks, or you can combine rhythm and lead together, like, you know, right? Beats like this are fantastic because it's really great to work on rhythm and lead, working on how to like time vibrato to fit in this kind of stuff. I know this lesson's kind of going all over the place. It's basically rhythm. We're doing chords, so think about that. But you know, I wanted to show you that it also is great for practicing lead stuff too. So you can do anything over this beat. It doesn't just have to be chords, right? But listening to the like how your vibrato fits with the time of the beat, right? You can kind of like do that, or you can listen to the speed of the vibrato and how that feels against the beat that's being played. Right? So again, all of this stuff is going to be broken down like super deep dive. Not only are Justin and Kenny going to explain how to create parts, how to do all this kind of stuff, how to create little licks to go between verses and choruses, how to use effects. They go through pedal boards, like the whole 9 yards, right? So if you're wanting to kind of like get to that next place rhythmically, this is a super, like, it's purposefully not very hard, right? I think you guys could probably play just about anything in the course if you're like at that late beginner, intermediate level. There's nothing that's hard or fast in this course that normal people couldn't play. And it's really going to help you capitalize on not having to have a ton of technique so that you can start to sound really great even if your playing isn't like ripping. You can always get better, but if you're starting with this in mind to how to make something that you're just decent at sound good, then when you actually are good, you're gonna sound great because you've started putting the feel and the time together from the beginning. And I think a lot of people, you know, they like takes forever and they just think about technique and they practice something fast and maybe kind of sloppily and not really like put the time into thinking like, how should this feel? And I think if you slow down and concentrate how to make something feel really good, you can always get faster, right? But if the feeling's there, as you get faster, you're just gonna sound like you're getting better and better and better, quicker and quicker and quicker, because the part that people really connect with is how the music and the playing feels. So work on that. As always, don't forget to subscribe and click the bell if you are not a subscriber. There's tons of killer stuff. It's not just me, but I bring in tons of world-class players. Make sure you check the main channel for the videos. There's all sorts of interviews with world-class guitar players. So all sorts of stuff from lead to session work to anything. I mean, they go over tons of different stuff. Everyone from Tim Pierce, Tom Bukovac, Guthrie Trapp, Mark Lettieri. We have like Andy Timmons, just on and on and on and on. Even awesome teachers like Corey Congilio, Jeff McErlane, all sorts of people have been on the channel. So make sure you check that out because all of these people have a little bit different approach in how they play. And if you put all those things together, it's just another ingredient you have at your disposal to cook up something real good. But you guys are amazing. Thank you for your continued support. All of you that have bought this course already, thank you so much. The comments have been awesome. A lot of people have emailed me saying this course really has been awesome for them already. So make sure you check it out. I guarantee you'll like it. And if you don't, I'll just give you your money back. All right. Thank you so much for the continued support. Don't forget your drum track down below or at the end of this, right after this, I'll put this beat and I'll just let it loop for a while so you guys can practice all this stuff as well. All right. We'll catch you next time.